The cake is still sitting on the table. 60 candles. Not one of them lit. I bought it myself this morning, drove to the bakery on Piedmont Road, told the woman at the counter it was for a special occasion, smiled like I meant it. And now I'm sitting here in my dining room in Atlanta, in the house I've lived in for 31 years, and I cannot bring myself to cut a single slice. Because the chair next to me is empty. I put it there this morning, set the placemat, put out a fork, straightened the chair like there was a reason to. And then I stood there for 20 minutes before I finally admitted what I already knew. He isn't coming. He was never going to come. And I am the reason why. Honest to God, I don't even know why I'm telling this story. Maybe because I've spent 12 years lying to everyone around me, and I'm too tired to do it anymore. Maybe because someone out there is sitting in the same position I was, calling themselves neutral, calling themselves fair, telling a wounded person to move on, and I need them to hear what that choice actually costs. Whatever the reason, this is the truth. All of it. Starting from the night I told my son Marcus to get over the worst thing that had ever happened to him, and ending here, alone, with an unlit birthday cake. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I had 2 sons. Derek, my older boy, 44 now, a commercial pilot, confident the way men are when everything has always come a little too easily. And Marcus, 40 now, my quieter one, a wildlife conservation officer who spent years working out of a remote station in western Montana. They grew up in this house. They shared a bathroom for 6 years and barely fought about it. They weren't best friends, but they were brothers, solid, the kind of solid you take for granted until it's gone. Marcus met his wife, Layla, when they were both 17. She was a photographer, the kind who could find something worth shooting in an empty parking lot. He was steady and outdoorsy and completely devoted to her. When they got married at 25, I cried through the whole ceremony. I thought, this is it. This is what all those years of raising him were for. 3 years later, Layla left. Marcus called me on a Tuesday night. I remember because I'd just gotten home from a church potluck and I still had my good earrings on when the phone rang. His voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since he was 12. Mom, Layla's gone. She moved out 3 weeks ago. I thought she just needed space, but she called today and said it's done. I told him I was sorry. I told him breakups happen, even in marriages, even to good people. I told him he would get through it. I hung up feeling terrible for him, but also, I will admit this now, a little bit relieved that there were no kids. Clean break. Easier to move forward from. That's what I told myself. 2 weeks later, Derek called. Mom, he said, and his voice had that careful, slightly too controlled quality it gets when he's about to deliver news he knows I won't like. I need you to hear me out before you say anything. Layla and we're together now. I couldn't speak. My brain just stopped. He talked fast. She reached out after the split because she was a mess and didn't want to bother anyone. They talked, it grew into something, they didn't plan it, it just happened. She'd already left Marcus. It wasn't like that. Those were his words. It wasn't like that. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him what kind of man does this to his own brother. But I didn't, because Derek sounded genuinely guilty. And genuinely guilty was something I could work with. And when I called Layla, she said all the right things too. I left because Marcus and I had grown apart. What happened with Derek came after, I swear. I wanted to believe them. Lord, I wanted to believe them because the alternative that my oldest son had been pursuing his brother's wife while they were still married was something I couldn't hold in my hands without everything falling apart. So I chose not to. I chose to believe the version that let me keep both my sons. I told myself it was wisdom. It wasn't. It was the first cowardly choice in a long chain of them. Marcus called again a few days later. His voice was flat in a way that scared me more than crying would have. Did Derek tell you? He asked. He did. And I hesitated just long enough for Marcus to know what that hesitation meant. Mom. She left me and 2 weeks later she's with my brother. You really think that just happened? I'm not saying it isn't complicated, I said carefully. But honey, marriages end. People move on. You need to. Don't. His voice went cold and quiet. Don't tell me to move on. I told him I wasn't choosing sides. I was trying to hold the family together. I told him Derek was his brother, and that we work through things because we're family. There was a long silence. And then Marcus said, Okay, Mom, I understand. That was the end. I called him 3 days later. Disconnected. I called his ranger station. He transferred immediate request, no forwarding address. I drove to his apartment that weekend. Lease terminated. Gone. I spent 2 days in a panic, calling anyone who might know where he'd gone. The ones who knew wouldn't tell me. He asked us not to, one of his coworkers said. Sorry. My husband, Raymond, God rest him, was the one who finally tracked down a new number through the State Park Service, a station in rural Montana. I called immediately. Voicemail. I left a message. Then another. Then another. He never answered. Not once. Raymond sat me down one evening about a month in. You really believe Layla left Marcus and immediately fell in love with Derek? He asked me quietly. I said I wasn't going to accuse anyone without proof. He looked at me for a long moment. You could have told Marcus you understood why he was hurt. I was neutral. Raymond shook his head like I'd said something in a foreign language. There is no neutral here, baby. You just can't see that yet. I didn't want to hear it. So I stopped talking about Marcus around Raymond, and Raymond stopped bringing him up. We walked around the empty space in our house like it was furniture we'd decided to keep. Derek and Layla moved in together 6 months after. I helped them pick out a couch. I told myself, see, this is real. They're building something. I didn't let myself think about what they'd burn down to build it. Thanksgiving that first year, I set a 5th place at the table. My husband saw it and didn't say a word. Just looked at me with this tired, patient expression I didn't know how to read yet. Marcus didn't come. The plate sat there through the whole meal, and I cried in the kitchen after everyone left for 20 minutes. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. You chose them. You chose peace over truth. Don't pretend you're neutral. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Told myself he was being dramatic. He'd come around. He didn't come around. Honestly, if someone had grabbed me by the shoulders in those first 2 years and said you are going to lose this child permanently, not temporarily, permanently, I don't know if I would have done anything differently. And that is the thing that wakes me up at 3 in the morning. Not that I didn't know, but that I knew, somewhere underneath all the self-convincing, and I chose comfort anyway. Year 2, Derek and Layla got married. Small vineyard ceremony outside Atlanta, maybe 30 people. I wore a dusty rose dress and smiled in every photo. Layla looked radiant. Derek looked proud. My husband stood beside me, stiff as a post, barely smiling. Marcus wasn't invited. Derek said it would be too awkward. I didn't argue. When relatives asked where Marcus was, I said he was working up in Montana. Couldn't make it. My sister pulled me aside near the end of the reception. Doesn't this feel wrong to you? She asked. Both my sons, I said firmly. I won't punish Derek for falling in love. She gave me the same look Raymond had been giving me for months. I ignored it, like I ignored everything that year. I sent Marcus emails from the address I dug up through his Park Service profile. Subject lines. Thinking of you. Please talk to me. I miss you. None bounced. I knew he was reading them. He just never replied. Year 3. Layla was pregnant. I drove to their house in Buckhead with baby books and a stuffed elephant and a bottle of Prosecco, and I held Layla's hands and cried happy tears. Their daughter was born in October. Holding her for the first time, I felt something close to whole. Almost. I typed an email to Marcus that night, "You're going to be an uncle," and stared at it for 10 minutes before deleting it. What was the point? Year 4. I found out through my sister that Marcus had gotten married. She'd run into one of his old friends at a Whole Foods in Decatur, and he'd mentioned it casually. Some woman he met in Montana, an outdoor educator. Sounds wonderful. I put my coffee cup down so my sister wouldn't see my hand shaking. He got married and didn't tell us. Didn't invite us. I went home and cried in the shower so Raymond wouldn't hear. When I tried calling the number I had for him, it rang twice and went dead. Disconnected. He'd changed it. I sent an email. It didn't bounce. He never replied. Year 5. My sister mentioned Marcus and his wife had a baby. Year 6, another one. I was a grandmother 4 times over. I knew 2 of my grandchildren. The other 2 I'd never held. Didn't know their names. Had to piece them together from quiet comments from cousins who still had some thread of contact with him. Holidays became performances. I took photos at every gathering and never posted them, never framed them. They sat in my phone unseen because they felt like lies. Raymond stopped smiling in pictures around year 5. I asked him once what was wrong. Fine, he said. He wasn't. Year 7 started at 3 in the morning with paramedics in my kitchen. Raymond. Massive heart attack. Gone before they arrived. I don't remember much of the week after. Sam handled logistics. Derek handled everything. The fog was absolute. I didn't think about Marcus. I was too numb to think about anything. The funeral was on a Saturday. I sat in the front row between Derek and Layla. The pastor spoke. I didn't hear a word, and then I felt it, a shift in the air, the particular quiet of a room rearranging itself around someone who just walked in. I turned around. Marcus was standing at the back. I barely recognized him. He'd filled out, broader in the shoulders, a beard, lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before. He wore a dark suit, and he stood perfectly still with his hands clasped in front of him and his face completely unreadable. Our eyes met. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just looked at me. I started to stand. He shook his head. The smallest, slowest shake. Stay where you are. I sat through the rest of the service unable to focus on anything except the man at the back of the room who was my son and felt like a stranger. When it ended, people closed in around me with condolences. I accepted them, searching over their shoulders. Marcus waited until the room thinned. Then he walked up. We stood facing each other, 5 years of silence between us. "Mom," he said. "Owen." My voice broke completely. He pulled me into a hug, brief and careful, like he was doing me a favor rather than comforting himself. Then he let go. "I'm sorry for your loss." His voice was gentle, matter of fact. The voice of someone who had done their grieving long ago and filed it away properly. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Please, not today." His eyes moved past me to Derek, who was watching from 10 feet away. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other. "Take care of yourself, Mom," Marcus said. Then he walked out, got into a truck I didn't recognize, and drove away. That night I went through Raymond's desk, his laptop, his files, and I found a folder labeled with one letter, M. I opened it. Years of emails. Raymond and Marcus. Not frequent, maybe every few months. Short notes. "Hope you're staying warm up there. The girls sound wonderful. Congrats on the promotion." The girls. Raymond had known about Marcus's daughters, had seen photos, had been a quiet, distant grandfather to grandchildren I'd never met, and he had never told me. The last email was from 6 months before he died. Marcus had written, "Dad, I love you, but I can't forgive Mom for pretending that what Derek did was okay. She asked me to move on so she could be comfortable. I moved on, just not the way she wanted. Give her my best, but please don't tell her we talk. It'll only hurt her more." Raymond's response, "I understand, son. I'm proud of the man you've become. You deserved better from both of us." I sat at Raymond's desk until my vision blurred. My husband had known. He'd understood exactly what I'd done. He just couldn't say it without choosing between us. So he chose Marcus quietly, from a distance, giving him what I hadn't, the simple acknowledgement that he was right to be hurt. And he'd stayed married to me anyway. I don't know, even now, if that was love or its own kind of cowardice. Probably both. If you have ever sat in a quiet room and realized that the person you thought was standing beside you had actually been grieving something you caused, and that they loved you enough to grieve it alone so you wouldn't have to see, then you know what that night felt like. It is a very specific kind of hollow. The kind that doesn't fill back up. I spiraled after that, not dramatically. I kept working, kept showing up to family dinners, kept performing normalcy, but inside I became obsessed with repair. I convinced myself it was what Raymond would have wanted, that his dying wish was for reconciliation. It wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I told myself anyway, because I needed a reason that sounded noble. Year 8. I hired a private investigator, got a current address in Montana, a phone number, his wife's name, his daughter's names. I stared at those names for hours. My granddaughters, 7 and 5 years old, I'd never met them. Didn't know if they liked soccer or art or horses. I called the number. Voicemail every time. I left a message on the 10th try. "Marcus, it's Mom." My voice shook so badly I almost hung up. "I miss you. Please, can we just talk?" He never called back. Year 9. Derek got drunk at Thanksgiving. Just 3 of us and Layla and their daughter, who was at a friend's house that night. He'd poured his 4th glass of wine and gone quiet in that way that means something is coming. "Mom," he said suddenly, "do you think Marcus hates me?" I was careful. "He's stubborn," I said. "Not about me." He stared into his glass. "Sometimes I wonder if Layla and if it started before she left him. I just don't remember anymore." Layla went pale. "Sam, don't. No. I'm serious," he said, eyes unfocused. I remember us talking, really talking, deep stuff while she was still with Marcus. And I remember feeling guilty. But I can't remember when it became more than that. Layla said it was after. Her voice was tight. "Derek, you're drunk." "Was it?" he asked quietly. "Was it really after?" The room went silent. I should have pushed. Should have demanded the truth right then, in that room, over the half-empty wine bottle. Instead, I said, "It doesn't matter now. It was years ago." Derek laughed. A short, bitter sound. Yeah, sure. I didn't sleep that night. Year 10 and 11 blurred into each other. Derek and Layla's marriage looked exhausted rather than happy, not fighting, just running from something too long to remember the starting point. Their daughter was growing up barely knowing me because the distance in our family had made every relationship in it a little smaller. Then my 60th birthday approached. I became fixated on it. I threw myself into planning, like if I got the table setting right, everything else would follow. I spent weeks preparing what I would say to Marcus. Practiced in the mirror, wrote it down, rewrote it. I called the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks office. Found his name on a regional staff directory, regional director. My hand shook so badly I had to set the phone down twice before I finished dialing. It rang once, twice. This is Marcus. His voice was deeper than I remembered. Certain. The voice of a man who had built something solid. Marcus, it's Mom. I could barely push the words out. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, I know. I swallowed. I'm turning 60 next month. I need both my sons there. Please. Another pause. Is Derek coming? Yes, but this isn't about him. It's about our family. About closure. For all of us. Closure for who, Mom? His voice stayed level, almost gentle. The question hit like something cold thrown on a fire. I moved past this years ago. You're the one who's still stuck. I told him I loved them both equally, he said, quietly and without cruelty. No, you don't. You love your peace more than my pain. You love the idea of family more than what Derek actually did. What do you want me to do? My voice broke completely. Disown my own son? He said. I never asked you to disown him. I asked you to acknowledge that what he did was wrong. That Layla leaving me and immediately being with my brother was a betrayal. And you asked me to swallow that so you could be comfortable and call it love. I had no answer. Nothing. If Sam comes, Marcus said. I won't. You can't mean that. I do. And I hope that whatever peace you got from this was worth losing a son who never did a single thing wrong. The line went dead. I called back. Voicemail, again. Voicemail. I texted. It showed as undeliverable. He'd blocked me. I emailed. It bounced. He had erased me down to the server level. I sat on my kitchen floor, phone in my lap, and I finally understood. He wasn't coming back. He never was. And I was the reason. Not Derek, not Layla, me. I went through with the party. Because what else was I going to do? I put on a dress. I did my makeup. I smiled when people walked in. Derek came with Layla and their daughter, who ran up and hugged me and said, "Happy birthday, Grandma," and I held her so tight she squirmed. When relatives asked where Marcus was, I said work. Montana, couldn't make it. Smile. Redirect. Repeat. My sister hugged me in the kitchen and didn't say a word. What was there to say? We took the family photo, me in the center, Derek on one side, Layla on the other, their daughter in front. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1, smile, click. We looked complete. We looked like a normal family at a birthday party. The empty space where Marcus should have been was invisible to everyone in that room. Only I could feel it. 2 hours in, Derek found me on the back porch. He looked terrible, eyes red, movements too careful the way they get when he's been drinking and trying to hide it. Mom, he said, I need to tell you something. Layla and I are separating. The porch tilted under me. What? We've been trying, he said. But she says she can't stop feeling guilty. Says we built everything on something broken, and she can't keep pretending she doesn't know what that means. I thought time would fix it, he said quietly. I really did. But she says every time she looks at me, she sees Marcus. Sees what we did. What you did. I heard myself say it out loud. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Mom. It started before she left him. We both know that. I think we've always known. How long before? My voice was barely a sound. Does it matter? Yes. He shook his head. 6 months. Maybe 8. Nothing physical until after she moved out. But emotionally, yeah. We were already gone. There it was. 12 years. That was how long I'd been choosing a story I knew wasn't true. Later that night, Layla found me in the bathroom. I reached out to Marcus last year, she said suddenly. Found his work email. Wrote him an apology. He wrote back once. She paused. He said he'd forgiven her years ago, but he said he'd never forget what his mother did. She looked at me. He wasn't angry, she said, just indifferent. And somehow that hurt worse than if he'd screamed. She touched my arm. I'm sorry for all of it. Then she walked out. I stared at my own face in the bathroom mirror for a long time. I saw what Marcus must have seen 12 years ago when I told him to move on. Someone more interested in keeping her seat at the table than standing up for the person who needed her most. The morning after the party, there was a package in my mailbox. Small padded envelope, postmark, Billings, Montana, no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, a photograph. Sam and Layla's wedding, 12 years ago. I was in it, standing next to Layla in my dusty rose dress, arm around her shoulders, beaming like the happiest woman in the world. Marcus had been cropped out, neatly, deliberately, and on a yellow post-it note in his careful handwriting, "You were there for her. You were never there for me." I stood in my kitchen holding that photograph until my legs went numb. He was right. That photograph was the truth. I had stood next to the woman who destroyed my son's marriage, smiled for the camera, and called it family. I had told him to carry something unforgivable so that I didn't have to feel uncomfortable at the dinner table. And now I was alone in my kitchen in Atlanta on my 60th birthday, and everything I'd protected had scattered anyway. This is what nobody tells you about choosing peace over truth. The peace doesn't last. It never was going to. The truth always finds its way to the surface, eventually through a drunk confession at Thanksgiving, through a folder of secret emails, through a cropped photograph in a padded envelope from Montana. The peace was borrowed. The loss was permanent. And I had made the trade thinking I was wise. If you have ever told someone who was hurting to move on because their grief was making things uncomfortable for you, I need you to sit with this story. Not because you're a bad person, but because neutrality between someone who did wrong and someone who was wronged is not fairness. It is a quiet decision about whose pain matters more. And the person you expect to be the bigger one, the one you think is strong enough to carry it, is watching you make that decision in real time. The mistake most people make is believing that not choosing is a choice they can take back. That one day they'll sit everyone down and sort it out. But people make their peace without you. They build their lives. They stop leaving the door unlocked. And by the time you're ready to tell the truth, the address has changed and the number is disconnected, and there is a padded envelope in your mailbox and a post-it note in the handwriting of your own son telling you exactly what you were. After the party, I stopped lying. To anyone. When people at church asked how my boys were, I said, "Marcus and I aren't in contact. I made choices that hurt him, and he's moved on without me." Most people didn't push. The ones who did got the truth. I stopped framing out the empty spaces in photos I never took. I started seeing a therapist not to get Marcus back. That door is sealed and I sealed it myself. But to understand why I did what I did. She asked me once why I thought I'd stayed neutral. I thought I was being fair, I said. Were you? I sat with that for a long time. No, I said finally. I was being a coward. Losing Derek felt harder. Marcus was stronger, so I expected him to carry the weight. That is not love. It is an invoice sent to the wrong address. Derek and Layla's divorce finalized 3 months after my birthday. He moved to Charlotte. I see my granddaughter twice a year. Layla remarried someone kind, from what I hear, and moved out of state. The family I spent 12 years protecting dissolved on its own schedule, regardless of anything I sacrificed to hold it. I updated my will, split it 3 ways. A portion to Derek, a portion to Marcus's daughters in a trust they'll receive at 18, with a note from a grandmother who loved them and never earned the right to know them. A portion to a wildlife conservation foundation in Marcus's name. He can't refuse it for them. Maybe when they're adults, they'll understand that their grandmother wasn't who she should have been. But she tried to do one right thing before the end. Derek called me a few weeks ago. We don't talk often anymore. The distance between us isn't angry, it's just tired. "Mom," he said, "I saw Marcus's name in a conservation journal. Article about wolf reintroduction in western Montana. He looked good. A photo of him in the field, his daughters with him." "That's good," I said. We sat in silence for a moment. I wrote him an email, Derek said quietly. Apologized. Told him I understood if he never wanted to speak to me again. "Did he respond?" "No." Silence. "Mom," Derek said, "I think he was right about all of it." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry I put you in that position." "You didn't," I told him. "I put myself there. I'm 61 now, alone most days. My husband has been gone for years. Both my sons are strangers to me, one by his own honest choice and one by the slow erosion of truth between us. I didn't lose Marcus in a single moment. I lost him the second I told him to forget the unforgivable so I could be comfortable at my own dinner table. He didn't scream, didn't issue ultimatums, didn't give me a dramatic final speech. He just left quietly, the way people leave, when they've already grieved you while you were still standing in front of them. And then he rebuilt, twice as far away, twice as solid. Without me, I think about what I'd tell myself 12 years ago, standing in my kitchen with the phone in my hand after that first call from Derek. I'd say, the choice you are about to make is not between your two sons. It is between truth and comfort. And you will tell yourself they are the same thing. They are not. One of them heals, one of them just delays. I want to ask you something before I go. Drop a 1-inch, the comments if you think I did the best I could under the circumstances. Drop a 2 if you think I knew exactly what I was doing and chose wrong anyway. Drop a 3 if this story made you think about someone in your own life you might be asking to carry too much. I want to know. And tell me where you're watching from, what city. What time is it where you are right now? Because I think about how many people are sitting alone somewhere with a truth they haven't said out loud yet, and I want to know you're there. If you've been watching this channel and these stories mean something to you, please subscribe. Not for the numbers, but because what we're doing here is telling the truth about the things families don't talk about at the dinner table, and somebody has to. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Atlanta, Georgia, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.